you understand that women and women's perspectives are important. So I think that's a challenge, figuring out, first of all, what are the different perspectives that are important in your life? And then second, what's important for you as a woman? And then I think another, I'm not putting these in any particular order, other than the first one is number one. Figuring out as a Black woman that it is important that you stand up, not just for what you are as a woman, but stand up for what you are as a Black person and be proud of it.
Hey everybody, I'm back with another episode of So What Success Stories. And today I have another special guest, Dr. Beverly Bond, who is a professor of African American history at the University of Memphis, still to this day. When I was a freshman at the University of Memphis, she was my professor of African American history. And it was really, really special because at the time, I wasn't into history. That was not my favorite subject, but she made me excited about coming to this 8 a.m. class every Tuesday and Thursday. And I learned so much from her, and I didn't even realize that she's Dr. Bond, I think it was in 2012, as a woman of achievement. And that made, the honor was special in and of itself, but it was so much more special being honored with somebody I love, admire, and respect for so many reasons. But this is Dr. Beverly Bond, professor of African American history at the University of Memphis. That's her current title. But she has many other titles that she's had in the past and more titles that she has right now. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Dr. Bond.
Okay, Summer Owens, my former student, I am so very proud of and very happy to be sitting here chatting with you and my sorority sister. And like me, you were also born and raised, I guess, in Memphis. You weren't.
I'm from Jackson, Tennessee. See, a lot of people think I'm from Memphis. Yep.
Because you become a Memphian. So
I have.
I can say that I'm one of these native-born Memphians because I was born and raised here. I attended Hamilton High School, which was one of the best high schools in the Memphis City school system at that time. I'm a three-time alumnus of the University of Memphis. So I came to the university in 1963. I was not one of the Memphis State 8, like our dear friend, Miss Bertha Looney. And we chatted about this already, but Bertha Looney is one of these people, when you say you literally stand on somebody else's shoulders, we both stand on her shoulders. So I came to the university in 1963. I was a freshman. I always tell people it was not one of my choices. When I was a senior in high school, I wasn't thinking of, oh, I'm going to go and be one of the people who's going to be in the first generation of Memphis State University students. I had my sights on other places, but I also have, I'm one of 5 siblings. And the one thing that my parents really wanted was for all of us to at least have bachelor's degrees. And of course, the way to do that was that they had to figure out the financial part. By the time I entered college, my mother was a teacher, teaching elementary school. My father was a postman. He had been a postman since about the same time that he got out of the Navy after World War II. So they were both, they both had jobs. But when you have five children and you've got plans for them all to go to school, then the children are going to have to understand the sacrifice.
Sure.
So at a scale back. And Memphis State, I keep calling it university, but it was Memphis State. It had recently been desegregated. It was affordable. It was close to home. My older sister had gone to Tennessee State, but she was only there for 1 year because she came back to go to Memphis State as well. Not because she wanted to, but the plan has to be executed. And when I got to Memphis State, I was in high school. I was in that science math track because of the times. That was, what everybody assumed, that this was where we needed to be to get a job, to, to help the nation during this Sputnik crisis and everything. So I had some really good science math teachers in high school, but I never really liked it. And I had some really good history teachers as well at Hamilton High School. And when I got to Memphis State, I was like, I am not going to do this. My sister was the science person, but I'm just not going to do that. So I went in the history department. And I remember that the one thing that everybody kept telling me was that, those history teachers, they're really tough. And of course, this is still the period of desegregation. So along with those history teachers are really tough was also, for some people, the suggestion that that department was tough because these some people in my department, I like history because I like stories. And that's what history is about. It's about telling stories. And when I got to the department, I, met some of what we consider the greats of the Marcus Orr, as in the Marcus Orr Center for the Humanities. And Walter Brown, who was I was his first advisee. I won't say that he was my first advisor because he was a young, new professor. And, I just liked history and I liked part of the department. And I did well in it, not every single day, some days you're just not going to do well. And as you probably don't know, very few people know this, I was really shy. So I enjoyed being able to be in the library and hiding somewhere in the library and just reading. So I got my first degree from the university. I for exactly 1 year. And I taught 8th grade American history. And I realized at that point, as I tell students and anybody who will listen, I don't like 8th graders, not on a personal level, but on a collective level, I don't like them. My daughter knows this. I wasn't even sure I liked her as an 8th grader. It has to do with where they are in life. And I mean, you've had an 8th grader, you'll probably have a typical age, but I think that's I think you said mental challenges. That's one of the challenges that people learn what you can do and what you can accept and find. And it's difficult because they're at a stage in life when one day they're children and they want to be treated as children. They want to be embraced, loved, supported. And the next day they are adults and they want to be treated as adults. All of these different stages. And you have to figure out, well, what is it today? psychologists, whatever, and have to figure out, for young people, for their good, how to be supportive of each of them on a different basis, different level. So I quit after the first year. And my parents, when I was in college, all they had really said was, you need to be able to have a job where you could support yourself. That was everybody get your bachelor's degree. And that was why, I went into education in the first place. That was not my choice either. Like Memphis State was not a choice. I didn't really want to do teaching. I thought maybe I'd go to grad school right out of college, but that wasn't going to work. So when I quit my job, I went back to university, to Memphis State. I had a graduate assistantship so I could take care of my car note. I was still living at home. I got my master's degree, and I taught college actually at Lemoyne, at Memphis State, and at Christian Brothers. I had to have 3 different jobs in order to.
Oh, you did all at the same time?
All at the same time, yes. So I did that for, oh gosh, I guess about maybe 2 years. And in the meantime, I got married and had a little girl. And my husband was transferred to New Jersey. So that was the second phase of my life. Life is in phases. You have to kind of roll with the punches. So we moved to New Jersey, and I went back into teaching, but this time high school. And I discovered that I like high school students. I like teaching that level. So I taught high school at Teaneck High School in New Jersey, northern New Jersey, until we were transferred back to Memphis. And then I taught high school at Germantown High School. But even with all of these teaching jobs in Teaneck, New Jersey, and in Germantown, I was still a student. I have to. Just to see whether I could still think on a higher level and really be beneficial to my students. Because I was teaching American history, but I was teaching advanced placement American history. So again, I wanted to know all of, what was the new stuff that was coming out about the old stuff in history. And in New Jersey, I taught Black studies or African American history. When I got here back to Memphis, to Germantown, I was teaching American history, but advanced placement. So I wanted to be able to offer my students what they needed to be able to pass the advanced placement exams. So I was at university again. My daughter finished college. And I just decided, well, maybe since I was convinced at that point, I could still think like on this higher level, thinking skills. I decided that I would try to finish my doctorate. This is not going to work. Because having a daughter, a junior high school daughter, that's when I could tell you that I was convinced again that those junior high school people they're a whole different group. So I dropped out of an EDD program to concentrate on her. And then when we moved back, she was in high school. And when she went to college and finally finished or whatever, she was, I think, on a 5 or 6 year track or something. But when she finally finished, I was pretty close to finishing my doctorate at that point. So I got my doctorate. And I know one of the questions you were going to ask is,
And I'm still gonna ask. So let me jump into it. So okay, because you have so much, and I'm looking at it's like I can see your brain. I'm like, her brain is so full and beautiful. So let me get some more of it out. So in this program, I have what I call the So What Success System. It's my belief that if you can learn to overcome obstacles, eliminate excuses, and calculate choices, you can have so what success. And that is success in spite of any challenges that you face. And Dr. Bond, you've had some, I know, along the journey. I can't wait to get into this to learn about them and successful. So my first question is about obstacles. Talk about some of the obstacles that you've had to overcome on your journey.
I think one of the biggest obstacles that people have, and I think women have this obstacle, whether they're Black or white, they have this obstacle. And that is that they have to figure out over and over again exactly how do you put together all these different phases of your life. If you make this decision that you're going to be wife, mother, professional, how do you get all of those together in a way that doesn't compromise your family or your career? So I think that's one of the things that it hasn't been an obstacle, it's a challenge. And I think I kind of made this decision when I was teaching in New Jersey, and my daughter was very young, and I was trying to be wife, mother, teacher, that I had to figure out the order for all of that. And the first thing, first, second, very close, would be mother and wife. And that was a commitment that my husband and I both made, that our daughter was important. And we had to make sure that she was safe, that she was happy, that she was challenged in school, because you can't just say we want to see them smiling every day.
Right.
No, it doesn't work that way. Because you're not really raising a child for the future if you want them to smile and be happy and, whatever makes it, it doesn't matter what the rest of the world going to know when something is not going well. And if you expect another person to smile every day, that's not realistic. So she would come first, and then being wife, having a household would come next. And then job had to fit in there because it's not a household where two people are working. My parents never had that. My mother never had it. I remember when I was dating my husband, and I loved his mother. She was fantastic, rural farm woman, and had all these sons that she adored, but did. All of the daughter-in-laws did. So I think figure out in your life, what is the order of all of this? And then once you get that order figured out, and once you get I guess what they say, get your priorities straightened out, make sure you can stick with that. And over the last few decades or whatever, I think another thing that's been important, and it's a challenge, is to figure out as a woman, what is important to you? Because, I remember when I was teaching in New Jersey and living in New Jersey, it was at the time when, everybody was just starting to whisper those words, the word feminist, and are you a feminist? Because you shouldn't be a feminist and all of this. And households and kind of ran it with the, iron fist and a nice glove. And so maybe other people didn't know it, but they did.
Uh-huh.
I kind of figured out, okay, it's not so bad if people label you a feminist. If they label you a feminist and they say it in a way that they're trying to demean your perspective, then you need to kind of step back and say, yeah, I think women are important. A woman's perspective is important. And so now, from my classes, I have no objection to claiming the title of feminist because that's what I am, and I think it's important for women to understand that. It doesn't mean being a feminist does not mean you're anti-male.
Right.
It means that you understand that women and women's perspectives are important. So I think that's a challenge, figuring out, first of all, what are the different perspectives that are important in your life? And then second, what's important for you as a woman? And then I think another, I'm not putting these in any particular order other than the first one is number one. Figuring out as a Black woman that it is important that you stand up, not just for what you are as a woman, but stand up for what you are as a Black person and be proud of it. I was talking about it in class yesterday, but this new movie, Passing, everybody's like, oh, Passing. They're going to talk about this, and this is important. And one of the things that I think we as Black female historians have started to point out is that people are talking about the idea of the movie, but not about the author of the book that the movie is based on. They are not citing this Black woman's work. It's almost like they're erasing her. And I think a Black woman, is this Ava DuVernay who's doing that one?
I think so, yeah. And I have to be honest with you. I know she's doing what I'm watching, the one on Colin Kaepernick,
Yeah.
but I'm not familiar with Passing.
Yeah, Passing. To kind of, first of all, cite the Black in during the Harlem Renaissance. Although I think most people just say Harlem Renaissance has got to be like Claude McKay and Langston Huston. And, but what about the women? So that's a part of what I think is important. Know your history. Be proud of who you are as a Black person. I don't know. I've always been, that's a challenge because the way the society frames Blackness and has always framed Blackness, it's difficult, but what else are you going to be? And why would you accept somebody else's ideas of what you are? So, having your priorities straightened out personally, and then, understanding who you are as a woman, and then understanding that you are a Black woman. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with any of that.
Yes.
Anybody.
I love it. I love it, Dr. Bond. And it's taking me back to your class when you talk about just history and knowing your history, because again, I can admit it, and I'm happy to always admit my flaws and shortcomings. I did not like history. I didn't want to talk about history. It just was boring to me until I understood why I needed to know, and then until I could, and you did that for me. Until I could start to see the stories and even see myself in the stories and see the people who came before me in the stories, and then also to start to see how history does repeat itself, and that how important it is to know history. So you definitely did that for me. The priorities, the woman, the Black woman, yeah, that's all me. And I think about, because I learned that lesson very early on because I had my son at 15, and balancing those priorities and being a mother and a student and working. And so, yeah, I know that's something that we as people all have to deal with, but especially women, and I think especially Black women. we talk about priorities and women, or being a woman and embracing femininity and being a feminist, and also embracing the Blackness. And I appreciate what you taught and what you represent, and I mean what I can do and be in all of that, because it really means a lot to me. I was also going to tell you, I didn't realize we had something else in common. I'm one of 5 as well. And all my siblings have degrees. All of us have actually advanced degrees, except my youngest brother who's working on his, which is exciting and it's meaningful because they didn't have money and it all came from scholarships and loans and we had to figure it out. But I did want to share that with you. And that is part of the next question about excuses, because we easily could have made the excuse not to go to school. Yeah. You and your siblings could have made excuses and it would have been understandable. But talk about some of the excuses that you could have made, or maybe that you actually did make, that you had to eliminate to get to where you are.
I'm going to back it up and I'm going to talk about my parents. My parents married very young. They were in junior high school. They were friends in high school. It was the middle of World War II, boyfriend, girlfriend, and they decided that they would just kind of cross over the bridge to Arkansas and get married when they were maybe 15, 16, or somewhere in there, 16, 17, something like that. So they were very young. And then they had children very quickly. My father joined the Navy, so he was away, and they had my oldest sister about a year after they married. I think she was born. Then I was born 18 months later. And then there was another sister born 18 months after that. And then my brothers were a little bit further down, maybe 2 or 3 years, but they could have very easily been statistics, teenage marriage, poverty. But I think one of the reasons that they weren't is that my grandmothers and my grandparents on both sides were very determined that they were not going to be. Now, that was a little difficult because my father was his family's baby. I mean, when you are the baby of the family, everybody, in fact, when they got married, went across the bridge to get married, it was his oldest brother who actually took them. So I'm like, I know that didn't sit well with my grandmother, his mother. Mm-hmm. And then my mother was the oldest of 3 sisters. So it's kind of like, here's the oldest and here's the youngest. And,
that's an interesting dynamic, huh?
And my mother was a strong-willed woman. Even when I think she was a kid, I think she was strong-willed. And it was just lucky, really, really fortunate that when they built a home right across the street from my grandmother. So my grandmother literally raised 2 households, her own household and her oldest daughter's household. And I think she had that same kind of vision that my parents eventually had, and that was that her 3 daughters would eventually get their degrees. So her second oldest, my Aunt Jerry, who's still living now, she got her degree. And then the youngest, my Aunt Peggy, got her degree. And then my mother actually went back and got her GED. And then she went back and she got her bachelor's degree at Lemoyne. And then she went back, and I love the picture of my graduation in 1967 because we both graduated in the same ceremony. She got her master's. So, talk about overcoming challenges. That taught me that you can overcome these things. You don't have to be a statistic. And then I have to tell you, when you were in my class, I remember not only you, but I remember you and your son. And I was like, this woman really has her mind together. And I don't know if I ever met your grandmother, but I remember your grandmother and her being so supportive of you. And it always reminded me of my grandmother, that, you were going to get that degree. And she didn't make it, she didn't kind of smooth everything over and say, I'm going to do all of this stuff so that Summer will not have a single care in the world and she can just go. Your grandmother didn't do that. She knew that you were going to have to be able to face challenges. So that always impressed me about you, is that, maybe there's, something there, another common feature. And I think that's something that a lot of young women and young men, you have to figure out that you are going to have challenges. Life, there's a poem, life for me ain't been no crystal stair. That's not for anybody, no matter how fortunate you think a person may be. If you look at a person and say, oh, she's had everything, she's had 2-parent household, plenty of money. Life
Right.
isn't that way. So I'll use that, you first of all, and then my parents as a challenge, showing how people confront challenges and you deal with them.
And I that means a lot to me that you even remember that. And for a moment, I went back to that time. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember exactly how I felt. But I agree with everything that you said. And it all comes down to choices. It all comes down to choices and decision. And I made a decision, like you made a decision, and obviously your aunts made a decision. I'm going to make it. I'm going to get this degree. I'm going to.
And well, one of the choices was that I had to realize that I'm a perpetual school or something, but he's like, it's done. You've done them all.
Like now.
And I had to kind of face this choice at that point because the history department, they were looking for a tenure track position in African American history, preferably African American women's history. And I had many, many years by that point of teaching public school. And I was teaching advanced placement American history. And I never planned to leave public education to switch over. That wasn't a part of my plan. I just got the PhD because I wanted to do it. It was a personal challenge and I had achieved this goal. So, I'm in a good situation. I like my high school students. They're fun, they're challenging. I like my courses. Then somebody said, well, why don't you apply for this position in the history department at the University of Memphis? And I'm like, okay, sure. You want me to do that? And they had to tell me how to apply because applying for a position on a university level and on a public school level are very different. But I must have been the most relaxed candidate out there because it really didn't make me any difference. I had a job. And then I got the job. And that was a choice. Okay, what am I going to do at that point? Because I am tenured. I have a lot of years teaching in high school. Salaries, as good as teachers are never going to be wealthy unless they go in maybe business or something. But, it was a good salary and I'm in a good situation, home life and everything. But then I had to face it. Okay, do I want to give all of this up and go over into a different arena of teaching, which would require starting all over again and learning what I have to do in order to advance in this career, because there are different things that you have to do. There are different ways you have to learn how to get done. So that was the difference. And my husband and I talked it over, because it's not the kind of decision that one person in a household can make. When you've decided that this is a 2-person household and my daughter was out of college, so she's on her own. So we had to kind of talk it over. And I decided that, okay, I could keep doing what I was doing, but I don't know how much longer I could keep doing it, because, public education can be kind of rough. I wasn't going into administration. I had a possibility of doing that when I was in New Jersey. And I had a very wise brother-in-law who was living in New Jersey too. And I came home and I was telling he and my husband, that I had gotten this offer of an administrative position. And he looked at me and he said, you're not an administrator. And, a lot of people would take that as a put down. But he looked at me and said, you're a classroom teacher. And that was the positive, because he understood I needed that kind of interaction in the classroom more than I needed the administrative side of life. I didn't need, so, I wasn't going into administration. And I just said, okay, I'm not going to go up the ladder that way. I am, I'm going to take this job and start all over again, and work toward tenure in a different way, in a different setting. And I'm going to do this because there's something else that I want to do that I can't do in public school, and that is that I want to write. And I want to write about African-American women and African-American history in Tennessee, in Memphis, because nobody's doing that. So that was one of the choices that I had to make. And, a lot of people would say, well, of course it was a good decision, great choice, because teaching university is so much better than teaching in high school. Well, it isn't. It's just a different kind of teaching. I had great students. Some of them, graduated from Germantown High School and then came over to University of Memphis, and there they have me again. So,
lucky are they?
but they actually made the decision to take me again. I'm like, wow, once was not enough for years.
I love it. I love it. And I think it's so interesting, because I know you only shared that example, but there's so many choices that you've had to make on your journey. And I love the choice that led you to me. And I'm really, really grateful for it. Okay, so
led me to you too. So
I thank you. Well, with the SOA Success System, if you can overcome obstacles, eliminate excuses, and calculate choices, you can be successful. And you have had a successful career, a successful life, by most people's definitions. But how do you define success?
I think I define it. It's hard to say how you define it, because I don't think we ever get to the point where we are absolutely at the end of the road in terms of success. Every day is a challenge, and if you can overcome it, then you get that success. I think last spring, this time last year, when it must have been my department chair, Dan Yanowski, he said, I'm going to nominate you for eminent faculty. And I'm like, oh, Dan, I've been nominated before. I've done this. You keep applying, once you get in the pool, you apply. You're open to applying like 3 times, and I'm like 5 times. And I did it for 3 or 4 times. And then when I could have applied for the 5th time, the first time around, I just decided I wasn't going to do it anymore, because I had some other challenges. I had some physical, personal challenges, illness that I had to overcome. So I didn't do it. And then he came back and he said, well, just I'm going to nominate you and, just go ahead and apply again. And I think it was like the applications were due in January or something like that. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this only because he thought enough of me that he wanted to do it. So I did. But it's kind of like, and I had been nominated for something else at the same time. So, and I needed recommendations. So I had to get these recommendations from people who knew my work. And then I had to turn around and ask almost the same people for another set of recommendations. So it's kind of like I was apologizing. And I'm so sorry to have to ask you to write another recommendation, but could you do this? And when I got both of these things, one of them was the Alumni Association Distinguished Researcher Award. And then I got eminent faculty in the same year. And I was like, wow. And I guess the way that was success to me.
Yes.
I also thought it was kind of funny. I was like, oh, they must think I'm about ready to retire now. So,
are they trying to give me a hit?
so we think you have done this so long that we're going to reward you at the end of your career. And nah, I don't think so.
I love it. I love it. We do so many things. And like I said, I'm just honored to watch it. And congratulations. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
One more success. I think that in this age when marriage is not really valued a whole lot because, you don't know either side, male, female, whatever. I think another thing that I consider a great success is that my husband and I have been married for many, 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 many years. A long, 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 long time. So that's a success because marriage is like one of these things where you can say life ain't been no crystal stair because you have two different personalities and you have a lot that you have to overcome. And, if you can step back and say that people, if you can say people who have been married for 40, 50, 60 years, that says a lot. And I've been
and still happy, yeah.
Happy still together. And I've been married for over 50 years. We've been together longer than that, but I've been married for over 50 years. I lost a brother-in-law last week, and he and his wife had been together for over 60 years. So, that's a success in a relationship, period. People,
I think and congratulations on that. That is awesome. One of my so what's is I was married and I did not last. It did not last.
And that's the other thing. If you know it's not working, get out of it because it ain't no better. all the time. I have been fortunate, but you can tell when the relationship is not going to work. And if it isn't going to work, if it's not working on day 3, give it maybe a little longer. But if it's not working on year 3, it's not going to get any better.
That's the truth. Well, look, so my last question is about advice, and you just gave some great advice. but what other advice would you give the people who will watch this if they want to have success in their life, however they define it, but may face obstacles and will face obstacles because we always do? What advice would you offer?
I would say expect the obstacles, expect the challenges. Never expect that when you get into anything, whether it's a job, whether it's a family, whether it's a career, never expect that it's going to be wonderful, great, everything forever, every single day. Because life doesn't work that way. Expect the challenges, expect the obstacles. And I guess I'd say the same thing that I used to tell people when I go to like bridal showers and everybody's opening all the gifts and everybody's so happy for the bride to be. And, then they pass around the microphone or the card and say, now, what advice can you give the bride to be? So I'd give the bride to be and the person who has just accepted the new job or whatever, they've gotten into. I give them the same advice. Don't do anything on the first day that you don't plan to do for the rest of your life. So when you accept that job, if they say, oh, well, one other part of this teaching job is that we don't have enough custodial help. So would you mind sweeping the halls? If you do it the first day because they don't have enough custodial help, you're going to be doing this because somebody will say that's a part of your job. So we know you're a great teacher, but did you sweep the halls tonight? So don't do anything. If you don't plan to wash windows for the rest of your married life, don't wash them the first time that somebody says, we need to get these windows washed. Or cut the grass. My husband always tried to trick me into that. Oh, I got this new riding mower. Do you want me to show you how it works? And I said, don't think so. You got it. I don't want to cut the grass. So
I think that's excellent advice. I think that is excellent advice. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Bond. I wish, and I know we could talk for days, weeks, a semester, but I appreciate your time and the wisdom that you shared. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it. This was one of the easiest interviews I've ever done.